Somebody said I get jokes from Teddy Early all the time, and he sent me.
Wait, we're recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the lights on.
To do this for us, you know, the Group W bench.
Nice picture of Tony when he's younger.
Yeah, you see that? Yeah, and that's
a good picture of him when he was younger. You guys were talking about your family secrets picture. You know, Rich Lucas, IRS CID, was on that raid, and he was a friend of mine at DeVarco's. He raided Caesar's house, and he gave me a copy of it the day after the raid. I've got a copy of it, and he said, someday this is going to be very valuable. Then all of a sudden it was an exhibit, family secrets. Everybody's got one.
Yeah, you're talking about what, the Last Supper picture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have one of the originals though.
I do.
Yeah, I'm saying not everybody. Everybody else doesn't. They've got copies of copies of copies. You've got about the original, you know. I mean, who knows what fingerprints are on that?
No, Paul.
Yes, sir.
What was that before Rico? They took that picture.
No, that Rico was late '60s, early '70s, and that photograph was in probably 78.
77? Yeah,
78.
78.
Do that? Why would they do that? I mean, Arcado was a lot smarter than that. What?
Well, there's actually a couple of pictures like that, John. One is out at Pal Joey's in Palm Springs, and it shows him and Gus Alex and his brother, Sam Alex, Eupa, Cerrone, Pat Marcy.
Really?
All together. So there's
a lot of pictures
like that.
Aldericio's funeral, there's a lot of them all gathered together.
Yes.
But a funeral could be, couldn't a prosecutor take that photo from the Last Supper and use it as proof of a RICO?
It certainly was used for that in several trials.
Oh, it was? Wow.
Because these guys all claimed they didn't know each other.
They'd already testified, I don't know them, I don't know anything about them, and then they bring out the photograph and say, explain this, you know.
Right, and they all testified before Congress. They don't know each other except to run into each other once in a while. They don't know what each other does. It was a very powerful piece of evidence.
Yeah. I'm trying to turn off my background, and now I got
it. I like it. It looks like my home.
Looks pretty relaxing.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's relaxing.
To discuss.
It's hot, though. I did my Monday errands, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be 97 out.
Well, here it's, we shouldn't be doing this on a podcast, but it's going to rain for 3 days.
You're kidding me.
Well, it's that tornado. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, coming in off the hurricane. That's blowing over.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about with Red? I thought Spilatro, he's just endlessly interesting.
I'd really like to talk about Spilatro, too.
You have to come forward. What?
I said, I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want, and I'll give you an answer.
Did you know that guy they shot they shot him sitting in his easy chair in his trailer. One of Spilatro's guys.
In Vegas?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know anything that Tony did out in Vegas. We never talked about it.
Yeah.
We had an agreement. We don't talk about business. We just had a few drinks and hung out.
He was good friends with Robert Conrad, the actor.
Yes, I knew Bob, too. I knew him from a place called the Bird's Nest. It was a hangout. We all hung out there. It was on Wells Street and Division by the Currency Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
The Bird's Nest was like a sports bar.
Yeah, because they had been in a car accident. Spilatro, I think it was Spilatro and his brother and the actor, and Robert Conrad, a tourist bus pulled up, of all things, and they were snapping photos, and Robert Conrad left. He ran back to wherever they were because he said, I can't be seen here with you, you know.
He was seen in Chicago, photographed in Chicago. The IRS had, the CID had pictures of him. The FBI had pictures of him. Everybody had pictures that were taken inside the bird's nest or doors, surveillance when they're coming in and out.
With Robert Conrad?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Also, Tom Selleck.
Yeah. Robert.
Well, yeah, Michael was in Magnum PI with Tom Selleck, right?
Right.
Yes. Yes, he was.
Few show. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
What I was thinking, guys, if you agree, is that, you know, I have been fascinated with this Frank Cullotta and his webcasts. And when I talked with Camillus about it, that guy, in my opinion, and I wasn't there, so I can't contradict what Frank Cullotta says, but that guy was out in Vegas with Tony for what, a year and a half or something like that, and he's managed to keep this podcast going for a couple of years about that very short period of time. And I would think, Red, you probably knew Tony better than Frank Cullotta.
I did. I knew him a lot better. And you're mistaken about the time that he was out there, because he went out there in 1974. Tony went out there in 1970. Him and Irv Weiner. They were going back and forth from Deming, New Mexico. They had a 707. They leased a 707 plane. And Kurt Hansen told me, he said, they live like King Farouk. These guys are living high on the hog. And they had to, Tony was opening up he called it a haberdashery. And I guess they call it a gift shop now, but in Circus. And that was way back when. And then Frank was in jail. Cullotta was in jail.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about him. And then later on, when he got out of prison,
he got out in 79, right?
1974, he got out of prison, and he went out to Las Vegas, and he was there until Tony expired.
Right.
But, you know, they tried to kill Tony quite a few times. Frank went out there 3 times with an Uzi machine gun. They were going to cut him down on the court steps. And the other guys, I heard the tape conversation. It was there was a wiretap on it. And when I listened to the tape conversation, everybody else said, no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Why were they trying to kill him so often? Why were they trying to kill him so often?
Well, I mean, everybody knew that he was sleeping with Lefty's wife, and they knew he screwed the other things up out there, and they wanted him gone.
Yeah.
They figured he was a major risk on the trial in Kansas City, and I think he was up on a murder rap too at that time.
Yeah.
He just had Oscar Goodman was going courtroom to courtroom with him.
He had such a bad heart condition by that point. I mean, he was making at his will by the time, and by the early 80s. By the time he was having severe heart problems throughout the 70s and into the 80s, wasn't he? At such a young age.
He had a quad bypass, and he got fat. He got lazy. Once he got on the cocaine, that was it. That was it. I mean, he just got sloppy, lazy, and never stayed in shape.
You know, there was a woman here in Washington, D.C., very, very wealthy. Her family was very, very wealthy. It is very wealthy. They own large parts of the city. I've forgotten the reason, but she grew up in Havana in the 1950s. And I was interested in her because I thought it was important to get down, historically, to get down what was life like for a gringo in Havana in the 50s. And so she knew them all. She knew the president and Batista and so forth. And this was many years ago. And she said, you know, the reason Havana fell, the government fell, they were all coked up. This is a woman in her 80s. She said the whole government was coked up, the army and everybody else. And the same thing, they got fat, stupid, lazy, and Castro could just, you know, take advantage of that. So it's interesting. When
I was in Cuba, I was stationed in Guantanamo Bay. And when I was in Cuba, I was surprised to find this out. I really was. I was a young man. I was 17. But when I went to make a phone call to try and call the United States, the AT&T people in Cuba would tell me, we'll try and make it for you. And they got an American operator on the phone. And once they got an American operator on the phone, they said, we can't put the call through. And then it was explained to me that in 1959, when Eisenhower was in, he kind of supported this whole thing on Fidel Castro. But what happened was, afterwards, for like reparations for all the money he put into them, he said, you know those sugarcane fields? He said, how much, I don't know how much sugar was going for them, 3 cents a pound, 4 cents a pound wholesale. But he said, we're going to get ours out of the sugar field. And Castro said no. So we boycotted Cuba. Cuba did not boycott us.
Can we go back around to Tony Spilotro for a minute?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because there's so much to talk about with him. Spilotro was, I mean, how tell us again how you met him, Red,
Yeah.
and how you got to know the guy.
I first met him at American Bonding, and that was in 1970.
Was that a bail bondsman business?
Yeah, but he wasn't a bail bondsman.
Yeah.
Actually, Milwaukee Phil was there in 1969, around 1968, 69.
Milwaukee Phil was the boss, right?
Boss.
Oh yeah. Joey was subservient to him.
Yeah.
At that time, Joey Lombardo.
Joey Lombardo worked for Milwaukee Phil at that time.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
As did Tony, right?
But they kind of, that whole crew, instead of meeting over at Kozo's place, they all met at American Bonding and Mr. Pat's right next door, the restaurant. And it was kind of like you just go in there and sit down and they used to play a card game. Irv Weiner used to play it all the time, and also Schweiss used to play it. It's a Jewish card game. It's called Klabiash. It's a very fast game, but they played $100 a hand for it. I was looking at it saying, wow, you know, these guys got money. The way they had money, they threw money around like it was, you know, paper.
So you would see Milwaukee Phil, Joey Lombardo, Tony Spilotro. Who else would you run into? Irv Weiner. All at this
I ran into a lot of people where I really didn't know their name. Pat Ricciardi was there. But there were some people that I didn't know their names. I got to know Pat. I got to know Pat real good. And I'm kind of responsible for Pat's death, his murder. But all these guys I met there.
Wait, why are you responsible for his death?
Well, he was supposed to be collecting from the Bijou Theater. And while I was building the store on Wells Street, which was like, Bijou was 1349 and I was 1345, Pat used to walk through the alley. And he used to wave at me and we'd talk to each other. And then he'd go in the back door, pick up the money from the Bijou. And then everything got goofed up. People were going to jail. And the Bijou went into its video sales and all different kinds of things and was making millions and millions of dollars. And I broke into the back of it and went into the safe. And I was talking to Frank about it at the time because he wanted to take over all the pornography in the United States, period. He wanted to do a Meyer Lansky, you know, he wanted to take everything. And so even on the West Coast, he wanted to take over everything that there was. So when I broke in there, I only did it not to steal the money that was in there, but to look at his books to see how much money he made. And when I told Schweiss he's making $10 million a month, Schweiss says, "Are you shitting me?" And he said, "By the way, where's the money? Did you bring the money out?" And I said, "No." I said, "I just closed everything back up and slipped back out. They didn't know I was there." And he said, "Okay, I'll go take care of that. We'll talk to that guy." And he said he's been rat-holed. He hasn't been turning that money in. So
found in his trunk in the early 80s, right?
Right, and I called the FBI and told them, I said, I think we got a problem. And the agent that was working with me at the time, Scott Jennings, wasn't available. So he was doing something else, never got back to me. Pat died. Frank told me on videotape, I put him in the trunk of a smoker. That's his exact words. And that was it. But, you know, Pat was a young guy, and I think he was related to Mike Galita, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Mike Glitta looked like a gangster, didn't he? He
was a tough old guy. I mean, he was very difficult to deal with. I only had one dealing with him. He muscled a distributor, L&W Sales on Milwaukee Avenue. He just walked in and took Leo Weintraub's whole place over. And when he did, I used to go there and buy magazines and stuff from books, magazines, and he gave me unlimited credit. I became net like 30 days, but if I didn't sell them, I could return them. So I always had fresh material. And Larry Flint was involved in it too.
I think that what we should remind viewers is when we talk about theaters, when we talk about bookstores, when you think of porn now, it's so readily accessible over the internet. But during the 60s and 70s, especially into the early 80s, you would have to go into a bookstore and you would have to go into a movie theater, and they would be in parts of town, and the mob owned. You know, the mob had a huge interest in these types of. I mean, right, Red? I mean, that was really.
At the time, the Supreme Court had not decided what pornography was.
Right.
And they finally decided that it wasn't, nothing is pornography. It's called obscenity, the obscenity law. And the guy that did that was Larry Flint. He fought it all the way.
So,
and
I remember people being arrested for selling.
That was in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah, Cincinnati. And
right.
Obscenity, the Supreme Court said, well, I know it when I see it. And it was a phrase, but you know, they had these. You would go to these bookstores and to movie stores to get pornography, and as with a lot of sort of different streams of income, the outfit and wherever you are, they want their sort of piece of that, because a lot of it is a cash business, and a lot of it goes not quite reported the best way, and it's not exactly clear how it's all reported and how taxes are declared, and so there was a lot of competition between mob crews and among owners as far as suits. So as you read the stories of the outfit during the 70s, you see a lot of theater owners or a lot of bookstore owners, and I think that what we need to stress is that was how pornography was available during that time versus now when it should jump on your phone. Well, not me.
It's a real interesting angle on that. Is one of my duties in the federal government was to review seized pornography and determine if it was in fact obscene. The first time I did that with the federal judge, he decided to join me, and he had his secretary pop us a bowl of popcorn, and I can't imagine anything more awkward than sitting next to a federal judge watching pornography,
watching a stag roll with your grandfather.
There you go. That's just about as good. And it all went pretty well the first time. It was a bunch of very attractive ladies on a yacht in bikinis, and he looked at me and he said, well, this doesn't seem to be so bad. And then one of the ladies proceeded to take a banana out of the fruit basket, and things went downhill fast.
Yeah.
I had a problem with it in another way because I had a lot of gay customers. Yeah. And so we had a lot of gay pornography. But the rules that the FBI gave me was anything but animals and children, no kiddie porn. And I think the first operation I got involved in was my porn. I don't know if you guys know about that or not, but that was back in '73, Operation My Porn.
No.
It was like a convention in Miami where it was all pornography, and everybody showed up. Chicago showed up. I forget the guy's name from Brooklyn. He showed up. Everybody showed up in Miami. And the FBI was there taking pictures left and right. And a lot of indictments came out of that, a lot of indictments, but they were called pornography. And that's when, you know.
A lot of selfies came out of it, too.
Pardon me?
A lot of selfies came out of it, too.
It did?
No, I'm just teasing.
Your humor.
Selfies, people taking pictures. Yeah.
That's your humor.
You know, right now on eBay is,
I don't think they can take selfies, man.
A question for Paul, but I did want to say, did you know that about Spilatro? But Deep Throat, the film, was a mock production from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
It's made over $50 million in that time, and no one knows where a penny of it went. And that's
well, yeah, I have a good idea where some of it went.
Paul, what I never quite understood when they got Spilatro, when he went on trial, when his famous words, Tony Spilatro versus the people of the United States and America, how do you think that's going to end? That was the sentence. What was the charge?
Well, he was charged with all kinds of different things. In the days before he died, he fought case after case, and he was never convicted. He had murder charges. He had the hole in the wall gang pending over him. He had RICO charges. All these things, both in Chicago and Las Vegas, he was involved in them. And he wasn't convicted. He wound up dead before that ever happened, and never went to trial in his last case. So he was facing a variety of charges. He seemed to be pretty much bulletproof. He had Oscar Goodman on his side, who wound up being the mayor of Las Vegas.
Yes, yeah.
But and played himself in Casino, I believe, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I thought he did, Camillus.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so you're looking at RICO, murder, theft, burglary, robbery, everything you can imagine against the guy at the time, one after another.
Yeah, it was really stacked. I think as Red has said though, and a lot of informants at the time and different wiretaps have said on and conversation the FBI had, he was also seen as sort of a dead man walking just because of the heart condition and the like Red said, the quadruple bypass, and he had just filled out another will, and he really wasn't expected to. I mean, he really when you see the pictures of Tony old versus Tony young, it's really quite a difference, and he really was not in good health too. So had things not gone one way, as Paul you said, it would have gone another way with the law, or he would have probably been on his own shortly thereafter, just with his heart condition. So he was really burning, at both ends of the candle.
Was Tony?
And the cocaine could not have helped that.
That's right. You're exactly right, Paul. You're exactly right.
Red, I don't think a lot of people realize they've seen Casino and they know who Joe Pesci was playing, but they don't know some of the infamous things that Tony Spilatro was actually involved in. Can you tell us about, say, Marilyn Monroe?
Well, I was just going to ask for a second. Why did they kill Michael? I mean, he didn't. Michael
was the bait. Michael was the bait to get him to go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a good question. I'm sorry. What about Marilyn Monroe and Spilatro?
All I know is that he was with Schweiss when he did that. So
What?
they were posing as tile setters where they would set tile. And she had just come back from Mexico, and she bought some terracotta tile, and she wanted it laid out in Brentwood in her little complex that she had. And they were there as tile setters. And it was kind of, somebody referred them and everything else. Frank told me about it, not in detail, but he said, my rap partner, Tony, that's how he said it. My rap partner, Tony was with me at the time. And I said,
what you're saying here is, just so people, I'm sure people understand,
Right.
Marilyn Monroe, who was one of the biggest stars in the country at the time, who was involved with John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Sam Giancana. As a matter of fact, I think
Frank Sinatra.
Her last night was Sam Giancana.
Frank
The
Sinatra.
next day, she winds up dead.
Well, it wasn't exactly she winds up dead. One of the things you have to remember that most people don't know or understand was Secret Service, FBI, the mob, CIA, everyone had her phone tapped. And it was all tapped by the same guy. He worked for the phone company. And so they say, go in and tap the phone. Well, they have this tap, that tap. So when she made a call, it was like everybody got it. So they all knew about it. So the way I think I told you last time, the way I understand it was that
Teamsters also had her wired.
pardon me?
The Teamsters had her wired. I don't know why, but
I don't know why either. I don't know if they. I've never heard that before, but
I think, if anything, I would say because Hoffa was trying to get something on the Kennedys.
Yes.
I would agree on that one because he really had a fervor for them.
the actress was on Hill Street Blues. She played the wife. She bought Marilyn Monroe's home, and she sent the guy up because there was something wrong, and he came down with handfuls of wires. They had left in the attic. They had run it through the attic. Everyone had in those days it was a physical wire. Everyone had a wire in the place.
Well, it's the thing that came to me was this: whenever the CIA wanted any dirty work done, they would involve the mob. And if they were the shooters, most of these guys were desk jockeys. They didn't go out. They didn't have contract killers. So who best? The mob is involved in the thing anyway. It wasn't in their interest. So, to leave her live, I mean, she was going to expose too many things. It was just done the way it was done.
And I think that I think that there is enough reason to just to she was out of her head enough on drugs and depression and so many other things that it would have been easy either for for the mob to do it on their own or for her to. It's reasonable to believe she'd done it on her own, but it's also easy to imagine her spouting off her mouth in a lot of different places because she was a woman who was heartbroken and who was suffering from a lot of different things, and you could see why the mob would see somebody like her as a potential problem because when somebody's addicted and has all kinds of problems, they tend to talk a lot.
It was in everybody's interest that she should die. The mob did not want them talking about Kennedy and the election and how he stole the election and how they did it through Sam Giancana. And they just didn't want all these. First of all, they were worried about the wiretaps. They were worried about tapes. She said she had diaries. And they admitted that they went through and cleaned the house out before they even called the police, the locals.
He had called, Kim, I don't know if you're aware of that, a press conference, and then called it off, but she did it a series of times. And she told her hairdresser, a guy named Mickey, that she was going to reveal the whole thing in a press conference. And she could get a press conference like that. She was Marilyn Monroe.
She had called the night before she died. She had called the night before she died and said, I'm going to hold a press conference tomorrow. And she talked about it on the phone. She called her press secretary, and she talked about it on the phone.
Wow.
So they all knew. So it's like, okay, jump to it. Get a hold of Chicago. So I guess it was, at that time, it had to be Cardo that gave the okay to, what's his name? He went to Mexico.
Giancana?
Yeah, Sam Giancana. Sam gave the job to Phil Aldericio. Phil Aldericio took Schweiss and Tony and said, "You guys go out there, take care of this real fast. Do a good job on it." And they did, and they got away with it. They got away. To this day, nobody can prove anything on it. And I went and looked at that book, Milo Spilagros' book, and I have one of the original copies. But his partner in the law firm or PI firm, she wrote, I forget what her name is now, and I looked it up on Amazon. She wrote a second edition. It's got a different cover, and when I looked at it, it doesn't mention anything about Frank. But I posted that on Facebook. I actually posted the story about it. So it's there. It says what page it's on and everything else. So people are changing history because they don't want to be involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what was El Doricio like, Red?
Tough guy, real tough guy. He talked rough. He talked rough. He was rough. He was. I don't know. He wasn't as easygoing. He was more demanding, but he was also very clever, and he was very close to Irv Weiner. Irv Weiner and him were very, very close together. He liked Irv. Irv was sharp. Irv was a moneymaker. And that's when they actually approached, Milwaukee Phil's, Al Doricio's, Danny Seaford's uncle worked for Phil. And they kind of talked him into taking his small plastics company and buying this big plant in Bensonville. And they were going to wash the money through it. Well, that was okay, except the IRS caught him, and they yanked him in. And instead of getting a lawyer right away, he didn't lawyer up. He wasn't a mobster. He was a businessman. He let it all go. He let it all out. He told everybody everything. And so he said, "Yeah, I'll testify." And then he had to go back and tell the other guys he was going to testify. And they said, "No, you can't. You can't testify. We're not going to prison for you." And Phil was in jail already. Matter of fact, Phil died in 70, I believe, 1970. Yeah. He died in Marion, Illinois, I believe. But
sorry about that guy.
But Tony would have been involved, because he was involved in that whole scheme and everything. Joey Lombardo would have been involved. Irv Weiner would have been involved. There were too many people that were just, they were hanging on by their teeth. And he wouldn't take no for an answer, so they killed him. He was only 29. He was 29 years old. Think about it, guys. When you were 29 years old, you didn't have all the answers.
Piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
Now,
have you heard that? Sorry to interrupt you, Kim. Have you heard?
Go ahead.
Phil El Doricio went to prison, and this guy fell in love with his wife and and he actually, this poor dummy, went to El Doricio apparently at jail and said, "I'm in love," and El Doricio, "Can I marry her?"
That was his mistress. He had a wife. That was his mistress, and everybody when he got murdered.
What was his name? Sal.
Sam Cesario.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was. They're pretty sure they know who did that, and I think I do too. It was
murder.
Elman and Petrocelli.
He had a murder for after.
Yeah. Petrocelli.
Petrocelli, yeah.
But a lot of people used to talk about that, and when they did, they said he reached from the grave. He reached from the grave, and that was the term they used.
Al Doricio was already dead. This man was dating his mistress, and this man was sitting was sitting on the sidewalk in a lawn chair, relaxing, shirt open on the street corner, and two masked men come up and blow him away with shotguns. This is after Al Doricio is dead. This is the kind of pull that he had. That as they said, he reached up from the grave and took this guy. So.
Well, he had given instructions that when I'm gone, I want him dead because he disrespected me.
Yeah. Wow, tough. You know, Irv Weiner was a guy that shows up. You mentioned him earlier. He was an accountant. He ran an insurance business, I guess.
He was a bondsman. He spent a lot of time in Cuba, way back. We're talking about the 40s.
Places, doesn't he?
Pardon?
He shows in the history of Chicago crime. He shows up in the most remarkable places. You know, just some nondescript guy, and he's who was it they shot in the parking lot? Remember?
Alan Dorfman.
He led Alan Dorfman to his death.
Yeah.
He brought him there. He said, "Let's go here. Let's go there." And he stopped at a place and got a video, and he rented a video, some kind of video. And at that video, he told them where he was going, and they were following him. He had a radio on him at the time, a transmitter, so they could, see wherever he went. The original luncheon was supposed to be at the Bagel on Devon Avenue, and I guess it was crowded, so they wound up going to
the Purple Hyatt, right?
Right. That's where they wound up going to. But their original destination or date, so to speak, for a luncheon was supposed to be at the Bagel on Devon Avenue. Irv told me that himself. Irv lived in Niles.
I never knew he was involved. It just makes sense. I don't know why I didn't.
Well, I got a big laugh out of it because I looked at it. I came there right after it. I lived not far away. I lived on Richmond Street. I lived over in Irving and Richmond at the time, like Irving, California. So I jotted over there real fast, and I couldn't believe it because Irv was kind of big then. He was out of shape. He was getting older. I think he was in his 70s. But Irv, when I saw him there, I couldn't believe it was him because you would think that whoever did it would have killed him too.
Yeah.
But when I found out it was Frank, I turned around and said, "That's why." Him and Frank were like that. They were very close. So he set him aside and went bam, bam, and did his number on him.
Cleared it all up.
He was the last people Jack Ruby spoke to before he ran off and shot Oswald too.
That's correct. And also, his brother called him and asked him for the name of a good lawyer, and he recommended Melvin Belli to defend him.
No,
he didn't recommend him to Chicago. I'll tell you that much. He could have recommended Frank Oliver or somebody like that, but he didn't.
Frank, you're in Oak Park, right?
Yes.
And that's so. You don't have to name any names, but a lot of people that we talk about, and a lot of people that we hear about throughout the years are in that area. I mean, Oak Park is a really nice area of Chicago where a lot of people have lived, and so, I mean, when you run into people on the street or when you see people out and about, and I mean, there are these stories. I mean, it's got to be quite a side by side image to know somebody from the newspapers, and then to see them or their family or something at the store. I mean, that has to kind of present. It's kind of got to be one of the things about living in a place like that in a town like Chicago is, they're going to be your neighbors or live down the street.
It's son, everybody who everybody is, they've gone into businesses. Nobody has ever followed nobody I know ever followed in anybody's footsteps. Only the Calabres were the only exceptions.
Right. And I think that was sort of looked down upon because he did that. But I always thought that was, my family's from the Bronx, and I remember my mother talking and my older aunt saying, "Oh, well, that's when they came over like that." But the new generations, and you just live in the enclave with them, but they don't shit where you eat, and so it was just kind of we hear about these characters on TV and we think of monsters in cars and whatever, but there's a whole other side of people living in really nice parts of town and smiling and waving at their neighbors and trying to make a better life for their kids. And I think that's just an interesting sort of dual image that I always have.
Yeah.
Well, like I'm in Oak Park, and River Forest is right across the street, a couple blocks down, Red Nose. And, Cardo lived there, Blasi lived there. I mean, there's just a whole list of people that lived there. And there was never any trouble. And everyone always remarks how quiet it was back then. There was never any trouble. You didn't know who they were. They went to their gas station. They went to the store, whatever they did. They were very low-key. Cerrone, everybody, very low-key. They just, you didn't make a ruckus where you lived.
My father at that time worked at Polk Brothers in River Forest.
Yeah, right there between River Forest and Melrose Park.
And he said they used to come in. Rocco LaRocco used to come in. Tony Accardo used to come in, and they buy furniture. They buy a lot of things. And when they they write it up on a ticket, for South Polk. And when they write it up on a ticket, they'd say, put down Joe Cash. And they come out with cash out of their pocket. And they didn't care. They didn't try and whittle them down in price tags or anything. I mean, they spent money. They didn't care. So they took extra special care of them. They made sure things were delivered. If they had a mistress or something like that, it went to their house and it said Joe Cash on it. There was nothing to trace. Nothing to trace at all. They were good customers.
Something that connects Spilatro to this very topic, the M&M murders. Didn't those boys mistake of killing someone in Elmwood Park? And that's why Spilatro killed them, because they killed someone without sanction in Elmwood Park?
Yes.
Well, that's quite a message, That's quite a message.
Yeah,
I mean, if you kill my neighborhood, this is what's going to happen to you. And Elmwood Park still has that reputation today. You don't see any murders in Elmwood Park, do you?
Well,
you don't.
No. But didn't they kill they killed a waitress, didn't they? They killed, they got into an argument, killed one of the brothers, and then they killed they killed both brothers, didn't they? And then they killed the waitress that they were giving a ride home to. And that was not allowed at that time. No collateral damage.
No.
I knew both Maury and South Polk when I was a little kid. And they didn't kill any of the Polk brothers at all.
No, I meant the Polk brothers. When they killed the two people in Elmwood Park, it was a fight in a bar. And then they killed the fight happened. I forgot the guys. They came back. They killed the two brothers that were in the fight. Plus, they killed the waitress, an innocent waitress that was getting.
She was a witness. It was a sloppy job. She was a witness.
Lydia Abshire. Her name was Lydia Abshire. She was the waitress. I had it from a report I was writing, but I tracked that down. And Lydia Abshire, cocktail waitress, killed by Merlag. She was like you said, she was just there on her night. She was working on her off night, and they just stormed in, and like Brett said, I guess she was a witness, and that was.
She was collateral damage.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
You're right.
Led to the famous head.
It's people like that I used to get involved because of. I mean, I used to hear about these things, and I say, how do they get away with this? These people are really getting away with murder.
And that led to the head in the vice scene in Casino, which was really true, right?
Yeah, but that happened years before. That happened back in the 70s, before Frank Collada went out to, that had to be 1973 or 72, before he went out to Las Vegas.
But it was based on the M&M murder.
Oh, yeah. And also I was told somebody had photographs. Mike Byrne did. He had photographs of the body. And people were talking about it and saying that he wasn't laid on his back. He was laid face down when they actually put his head in the vice. And Tony's the one who put his head in the vice. So they told me. Tony and I never talked about that kind of stuff, so
Joe had a brother who was a dentist.
He asked me about it, I'll tell you that much.
Spilotro had a brother that was a dentist, right?
Yeah.
He had other brothers. Vic, I knew Vic too. I knew
Yeah.
Vic Spilaccio very well. Vic Spilaccio actually had a horse, his son, he bought his son a horse, and he stabled it at Ken Hansen's stable. And he got it from Cy Jane. Now, that was some time ago. I think I posted, John, I posted that on your page about Vic Spilaccio and the three boys. And
By the way, when I told you to paste on my page, what I meant was, you know, the mob history and current events, that page.
oh, sorry, wrong page.
Hey, I just move it over there. It's no big deal. But those people they'd really appreciate that, you know, reading what you're saying. Yeah.
I hope they do.
They do. And I do, actually. So.
Didn't the dentist, didn't he have something to do with Joey Lombardo eventually getting caught?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't he?
Joey had an abscessed tooth, and he had to have a crown replaced. And he was going to Pat on a regular basis. He was taking penicillin, you know, to get the swelling down. And he was going back and forth to him. And he'd go at night. Pat had opened up the office at night for him. And so he went there. And the agents I knew were looking for him at the time. They were trying to catch him. And finally, they upped the reward fee. It used to be $10,000 for Schweiss and $10,000 for Joey, and they got Schweiss in Wayne, Kentucky, and so they upped the ante to $20,000 reward. And so you can imagine some guy sitting back in a chair getting his, you know, teeth worked on, and he's talking with Pat, and the question that he asked him was, he said, "If you weren't in prison, do you think they would have killed my brother?" And he said, "No." He said, "I'd have stopped it." Later on, he turns around when he's talking to him and he said, "When you get the word to go and do something, either you do it or they take care of you." Well, 2 days after that, he calls the FBI and he collected his $20,000. He actually took the check for $20,000. He said, and he made a terrible, not a terrible, really a heartwarming speech. It was damning at the sentencing trial. He just couldn't believe how a friend of that family that long could allow Joey to give the okay to kill Tony. He had to approve
that he did.
Even though he was in jail, even though he was in prison, he had to approve it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Well,
Mike,
But it was really a case of either Joey or him. Because if Joey would have said, "Oh no, you can't touch him," when he got out of jail, he'd have been dead.
well, does anybody here know? I mean, I think the guy over my left shoulder in the corner there is the one who gave the order to knock Tony down. Sam Carlisi. Oh, you
I
were
believe
in prison?
I believe it was. But actually, they held, it's kind of like the movie Casino. They held a meeting with all the lawyers in back, and Ayupa did say he's got to go. That's it. He's got to go. So Ayupa passed it on to Carlisi. Carlisi probably ran it by Lombardo through some means in the prison, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I really think it was the sloppiest job they ever did.
And I think that there was a lot of, from just from things I've read, there were sort of two camps. I think a lot of guys did like the Spilotro, especially on the street. I mean, you read that about guys like Calabrese. He liked the Spilotro brothers. He did not agree with them being taken out. And then I've seen where Cerrone was suspicious of Spilotro going back into the 70s. So I think that Tony Spilotro was just a really polarizing figure. I think just that kind of charisma, and I think that had been creating wedges for a long time. So I think they had he really seemed to have had the kind of charisma that pushed you one way or the other with him. And that's based on how people talk about him, a lot of this stuff with the FBI. Is that right, Red? To see somebody you would either really like or really dislike?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It could be your best friend, and if you got to do it, you got to do it.
Yeah.
But another thing that a lot of people don't even bring into it is that with a vacancy in Chicago, when all of them were gone, if Tony would have survived, he severed his trial from the other ones. And that's what Joey wanted to do on Family Secrets. But it was severed. And if they all went to prison and nobody was there he would have beat the trial with Oscar if he would have. There was a vacuum in Chicago. And Tony was powerful enough where he could have come back.
Well, I had heard that he even went to Palm Springs to Accardo to make his case.
He did. He did. He did. That's a fact.
But didn't he burn a lot of bridges here, though? Many people involved and not involved.
They didn't want him back. You're right. You're right. They didn't want him back in Chicago. I mean, all the other guys, the Calabreses, you just mentioned his name.
Cerrone.
All he's over your right-hand corner, over your right. Yeah. Sam Carlisi. They didn't want him back. He would have upset the whole natural order that they had going. They thought they had going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Ferriella, they just didn't want him back. And boy, that sure doesn't look. The courtroom sketches are great. That doesn't look like him at all, man.
Red, Paul, what? Lombardo, we're talking about Joey Lombardo was on the run. He was wanted. We discussed earlier the FBI was after him and so forth. And if you remember, he took a rented house somewhere in Chicago in just a neighborhood, right?
No, he actually stayed with different friends of his in their basement. And he moved from one location to another location to another location. Yeah. And they tried to get him once. Pat told him where he was. And they tried to get him one time. And they couldn't get him. So they waited until he moved. They got him at like 1:30 in the morning in the alley. He put up no resistance at all. So
with a guy like that must have had a stash. He was too smart not to, of hundreds of thousands. Why?
His wife had it. Marion had it.
Yeah, I mean, why not just go to Wichita? I don't know, someplace. And
I thought at the time, they asked me what I thought, and I said, I think he went to the Bahamas. I think he took off, went to the Bahamas. Because you could change your name, get lost down there with that beard he had, nobody would recognize him.
And why would he stay in Chicago? I mean, I never understood that.
He really thought he was going to beat the case. He was going to get it severed like Tony got severed. And, you know, there wouldn't be any witnesses.
Well, he got caught right next to the Elmwood Park Police Station.
Oh, really?
That's cutting it off close.
Yeah. Right there. As a matter of fact, the police were all getting ridiculed because he was right under their noses.
Hey, Red, nearby?
Pardon?
You have your book nearby?
Yeah. Got it?
Okay, let's see it. We're going to show you the cover. What's the name of it, Red? So people... Nobody...
We'll block me out.
Nobody cares in what? And what I did about
it.
Yeah, by Red.
Put it on an angle there.
And it's available on Amazon, probably Barnes and Noble as well, right? So you can.
Yes. And Amazon's easier to get it on, but actually, I sent out your copy today. I autographed a copy and sent it out to Frank. Are you there, Frank?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
thank you.
That fan up there, is it annoying? Is it distracting?
No.
No? Okay. Jen, coming close to just over an hour, so we have to close it down. Red, thank you so much. Maybe we could do a third one.
If you want, I told you, I said, how many do you, I think you said, let's do 15. And I said, okay, do a dozen. I don't care.
It's good to see all of you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, I had a blast.
All
Be
right.
well, gentlemen.
Hi, you guys. I like hanging out with you.
Isn't it? Thank you so much.